My name is Vicente, and I am 85 years old. My granddaughter is getting married next week. She asked me for advice. She wants the fairy tale. So here is mine. Don't marry for love. That's my one piece of counsel after 8 decades of living. Marry for something else entirely. Let me tell you what happened. It started in a quiet house after the war. My parents weren't unkind. They were just practical. They talked about bills and chores. They never talked about feelings. My best friend Leo's house was different. It was loud and warm. His family argued and laughed and hugged. I thought that was love, that loud feeling. And then at Leo's house when I was 16, I met Joanna. She had dark hair and she was quoting poetry. Her laugh cut through the whole room. I was done for. What we had was a lightning strike. Secret meetings, stolen kisses. We thought the world only existed when we were together. It was all feeling, all the time. That feeling became our God. So when she got a scholarship to Paris for art when she was 22, we made a decision based on it. I was an apprentice printer here. I couldn't go. We cried and swore our love would last across the water. She had to follow her passion. I would wait. The letters started strong. Then they got shorter. Then they stopped. That great love didn't die in a fight. It just faded, like a photograph left in the sun. The love wasn't enough to bridge the real world. I was heartbroken. I decided love was a lie. A pretty one, but a lie. I threw myself into my work. I built my printing business. By 30, I was successful. And I was very lonely. And very cynical. That's when I noticed Margaret. She was my bookkeeper, 5 years older than me, methodical, sharp. We had sensible talks over the account books. I proposed to her in my office. I didn't get down on one knee. I laid out facts, financial stability, shared interest in the business. We were both quiet people. It made sense. I told her I thought it was a good partnership, a merger. She looked at me, nodded slowly, and said, "I agree. It is logical." We planned a small wedding. The night before the wedding, there was a knock at my door. It was Joanna. She was back from Paris. She looked beautiful and a little wild. She said, "Arthur, don't do this. What we had was real. This is a betrayal. We can still have that life, a life of passion." All the old feelings roared back. I spent the whole night pacing, torn between that memory of fire and the promise of Margaret's calm shore. At dawn, I was exhausted. I made my choice. I closed the door on Joanna. I walked to my wedding feeling like I had cut out my own heart. I thought I had chosen a safe, gray life. The early years with Margaret were quiet. We worked. We ate dinner. We read in the same room. The silence was comfortable, but I thought it was empty. I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake, if this was all there was. Then the fire came. It destroyed our print shop, everything I'd built. I stood in the street covered in ash, just staring. I was paralyzed. Margaret didn't cry. She arrived, looked at the ruin, and rolled up her sleeves. She called the insurance man. She found us a temporary space. She talked to the staff. She was a wall, a calm, unshakable wall against the chaos. In the ashes, I saw our marriage for what it was. Not a business deal, a fortress. We had built it together, and it was strong. That's when I felt it, this new thing. It wasn't lightning. It was slower, deeper. It was trust. The absolute certainty that in any disaster, she was my ally, and I was hers. That was the bedrock. We rebuilt the business. Life went on, steady. Then years later, the doctor gave us the news. Margaret was sick, a progressive illness. This was a different kind of fire, one I couldn't fight for her. The fear was so cold. I remembered her being my wall. I told her, I am your wall now. Our roles reversed. I took care of her. For years. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Her last good day, she was very tired. She held my hand. She didn't say she loved me. She looked at me right in the eyes, and she whispered one word. Steady. Then she was gone. So Clara, that's my advice. That dizzy love, that passion, it's a beautiful guest, but it's a terrible landlord. Don't marry for it. Marry for the thing that builds fortresses. Marry for the person who shows up in the ashes with a plan. Marry for the person you will show up for when the world gets quiet and hard. Marry for trust. Build your life on that bedrock. Then you'll understand. Love isn't the spark that starts the fire. It's the hearth that keeps you warm for a lifetime. Now go build yours. But I can see you might want a bit more of the story. The in-between bits. What happened after the fire, before the diagnosis? The ordinary days. Because that's where the bedrock gets laid, you see. In the ordinary. After we rebuilt the shop, things were different. Not loud different. Quiet different. I'd find myself watching Margaret. Not like I watched Joanna, all breathless and dizzy. I watched Margaret the way you watch the tide. Steady. Sure. One evening we were balancing the books for the new quarter. It was tedious work. I made a silly addition error. Instead of sighing, she just tapped the paper with her pencil and said, Arthur, your 7 looks like a 1. You've given us an extra £6,000. A welcome surprise, but unlikely. And then she smiled. A small, dry smile. And I laughed. A real laugh. It wasn't about passion, it was about recognition. Seeing someone and being seen. Honestly, it was better. We fell into a rhythm. I'd handle the printing machines, the ink, the noise. She'd handle the numbers, the clients, the quiet. We were a good team. We bought a small house. It had a garden. Margaret liked roses. I didn't know a thing about them, but I learned. I'd prune the bushes while she told me which ones were the climbers and which were the shrub roses. It was peaceful. I stopped thinking about the quiet as emptiness. I started thinking of it as space. Space to just be. Then my father died. It was expected. He was old, but it hit me harder than I thought it would. All those years of quiet distance, and now there was just nothing to fix. I came home from the funeral feeling hollow. I didn't cry. I just sat in my chair, staring at the wall. Margaret didn't try to make me talk. She made tea. She put the cup on the table next to me. Then she sat in her chair, picked up her knitting, and just sat with me. For hours. She was just there, present. And in that presence, the hollow feeling slowly filled. Not with words, but with something solid. That was trust. That was the thing. Years went by like that. Good years. We built the business bigger. We took a holiday to the seaside once a year. Always the same little cottage. We argued sometimes, of course, about money, about a hire she thought was lazy. But the arguments never felt dangerous. They felt like negotiations. We were on the same side, just figuring out the path. I looked at other couples, the ones who seemed all fire and drama, and I didn't envy them anymore. I felt a sort of calm pity. because I knew the fire burns out. And then what do you have? I thought we had all the time in the world. That's the great lie, isn't it? You build your bedrock, you think it's for the storms, and you forget that time itself is a storm. The first sign was small. Margaret's handwriting, which was always so precise, started to get shaky. She blamed it on a cold. Then she dropped a teacup. She never dropped things. She got frustrated, angry in a tight, quiet way I'd never seen. I told her to see the doctor. She refused. "It's nothing, Arthur," she said, but her voice had a little tremor. And that tremor scared me more than the fire ever had, because this was inside our walls. This was in the hearth itself, because that tremor scared me more than the fire ever had, because this was inside our walls. This was in the hearth itself. She finally saw the doctor. He was a kind man with a quiet voice. He said a lot of words I can't remember now. The only one that stuck was progressive. There was no cure. It would get worse, slowly, then all at once. We drove home in silence. I parked the car. I looked at her. She was staring straight ahead, her hands folded neatly in her lap. That's when I said it. "I am your wall now." She just nodded. She didn't cry. The next few years, they were a long, slow closing of doors. First, she stopped going to the shop. Then she needed a cane. Then the wheelchair. I learned how to cook. I learned how to help her dress. I learned how to lift her. I had to be strong, so I was. But inside, I was breaking. Every day I lost a little more of her. The sharp wit got foggy. The dry smile became harder to find. One night I was helping her to bed. She was so thin. She looked at me and her eyes were clear for a second. She said, "I'm sorry, Arthur. This wasn't the deal." It felt like a knife. I said, "The deal changed. It's all right." But it wasn't. It hurt. The hardest moment was the forgetting. She started to not know me. Not all the time, but in patches. She'd call me by her brother's name. She'd ask when her father was coming home. One afternoon, she looked right at me, her eyes wide and scared, and she said, "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" I had to leave the room. I went to the kitchen and I put my head in my hands and I cried. I cried like I hadn't since I was a boy, because the person I had built my life with, my fortress, was gone, and I was alone in it. But then, an hour later, I went back in. She was dozing in her chair by the window. The sun was on her face. I sat down beside her. She opened her eyes. She looked at me, and she knew me. She reached out her hand, so slowly, and she put it on mine. She didn't say anything. She just left it there. And in that moment, I realized something. The love wasn't in the remembering. It was in the showing up. Even when she didn't know me, I knew her. That was the bedrock. It was still there, under everything. Her last week, she was mostly sleeping. I just sat with her. I talked about the shop, the roses, our silly seaside holidays. I don't know if she heard me. On the last day, she woke up. She was very clear. She looked around the room, then at me. She smiled that dry little smile. I leaned close. I thought she might say my name. She just whispered, "Steady." Then she closed her eyes. And she was gone. I sat there for a long time. I held her hand until it went cold. The silence in the house was complete. It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. But it was a different silence. It wasn't empty. It was full of her. full of all the days, all the quiet meals, all the ledgers, the garden, the fire, the teacup on the table after my father's funeral. It was all still there. I had thought the illness took everything, but it couldn't take what we had built. That was mine forever. That was mine forever. And it's what I'm trying to give to you now. Here's what I learned, too late and just in time. I was wrong about almost everything when I was young. I thought love was a feeling you fell into, like tripping into a hole. I thought it was something that happened to you. That's why I chased the lightning with Joanna. And that's why, when I married Margaret, I thought I was being clever by avoiding the feeling altogether. I was a fool twice over. Love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build, day by day. It's choosing to show up, even on the days you don't feel like it, especially on those days. It's balancing the books together. It's pruning the roses you don't care about because she does. It's the cup of tea placed quietly beside a grief you can't even name. The lightning? It's exciting. It makes you feel alive. But you can't live in a storm. You need a house. Margaret and I, we built a house, brick by boring brick. And when the real storms came, the fire, the illness, we were inside. We were safe because of the walls we'd already made, without even realizing we were builders. So my direct advice, especially to those of you my age or getting there, look at your person, not with the eyes of first passion, but with the eyes of a co-builder. Are they your wall? Are you theirs? If the answer is yes, then you have everything. Nurture that. Don't perform grand romantic gestures because you think you should. Just be there. Be steady. That's the grandest gesture there is. And if you're young, like my Clara, looking for it, don't look for the person who makes your heart race. Look for the person who makes your soul calm. Look for the one you want in your corner when the world turns against you. The one whose quiet presence feels like coming home. There is hope in this, more than in any fairy tale. Because it means love isn't a magical accident for the lucky few. It's a choice. It's work. And that means it's available to anyone willing to pick up the tools. You still have time. Maybe not decades, maybe not even years, but you have now. And now is enough to choose to be someone's wall, to appreciate the fortress you're already in, to say the quiet, thank you, you've been putting off. That's where the real magic is, in the ordinary, stubborn, daily act of building something that lasts longer than a feeling. I've talked for a long time. If this old man's story has meant something to you, if it's made you think about your own walls, your own bedrock, then do me a kindness. Press that subscribe button down there. It helps more people find these quiet conversations. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next one. Give this video a like if you believe, as I do, that the truest love stories aren't shouted from balconies, but whispered across a kitchen table over years. Most importantly, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment and tell me, what does your bedrock look like? Who has been your wall? Or if you're still building, what are you looking for in a foundation? Your stories are what matter now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, a grandchild, a friend, a partner. Maybe it will start a conversation you needed to have. And for those who want to go deeper, there's a link below where you can submit your own story of quiet love, of partnership, of the this that holds a life together. We're collecting them. Perhaps in time there will be a book, a record of the real thing. My name is Vicente. I am 85, and my one piece of counsel, my only legacy, is this: build your hearth, tend it, and may it keep you warm all the days of your life.